Welcome, everybody. I think we are all ready. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and Paying for College 101 Facebook group. And I'm here tonight with Luanne Lee from your college, your college planning coach. Sorry, Luanne. I should know that. I really apologize because Luanne and I have been doing these now for like 4 years, right? So tonight is a walkthrough of the FAFSA. If you guys have been paying attention, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but you might have noticed that we've had a lot of, Zooms in the past really week and a half, and we were trying to kind of build up to the FAFSA. About a week and a half ago, or maybe close to 2 weeks ago, we did a session that was just what we called the financial aid basics, which was trying to introduce just some terminology and how the process works. Last Tuesday, we did a session with Calvin Cheney, who is the author of the Paying for College 101 group, the book. Luanne's going to hold up her copy. I truly, really suggest you buy a copy. It's tremendous amount of great information. You might even be able to just get your questions answered by reading the book. Luanne uses it as a reference. I use it as a reference. It's a great book. It's on Amazon. It's in its 30th edition. It gets updated every year. So anyhow, we had a session last Tuesday with Calvin Cheney, the author, and he also talked about kind of how financial aid works and what's important to know kind of about the system and whether or not you need to get additional help. And so if you didn't get a chance to watch any of those sessions, I encourage you to go to the Road to College YouTube channel, and you can watch it there. And tonight is the very specific, but a lot more information about the actual walkthrough of how you fill out the FAFSA and kind of questions that might be unique to this year, because there are, some little things. Actually, there haven't been a lot of changes, but I'm sure Luanne will talk about that between last year and this year. But there's some, circumstances that are causing some people to have to do a little bit more extra help or extra steps. And then we're going to touch on, and again, Luanne will tell more about, I think it's going to be 2024, Luanne, right? We don't even really know, but there's more than talks. There's going to be changes that are going to happen to FAFSA and EFC. That you shouldn't get yourself in like crazy about what those changes are now, because they've already been delayed, but you should be aware because when they do come, they might have an effect on what your financial aid may be. But it's going to be hard to really make decisions now about what those changes are, but you should be aware. So one last thing, please put your questions in the chat. I'm not going to actually interrupt Luanne as she's going through everything, because she may actually answer your question, because you don't know necessarily what she still has to talk about when you ask your question. But at the end, I'll try and pick out some of the questions that are more global, that hit a lot of the issues that you guys are asking about. I will recommend, Luanne and I talked about this before we, went live, that there's a lot of information here tonight. I will tell you, Luanne says she thinks it will probably go for 1 hour and 20 minutes. So if you want to know that timing up front, you will get a link to the recording tomorrow, and definitely watch this again, because it's hard to absorb everything in one sitting. If you want to take notes, that's fine. If you just want to sit and listen and then go watch it again tomorrow to take notes, that's up to you. But know that you can watch it again. So if you miss something, you'll be able to get the recording and zoom ahead, and find out what you need. But it's really a good practice. I had a lot of people, particularly the Calvin Cheney session, who wrote and said, I watched it again. And that's how, either they had more questions or they got their questions answered. So with that, Luanne, I'm going to turn it over, and we're going to get started.
Okay, great, Debbie. Well, let me go ahead, and I'm going to, hold on just a second, share my screen. I minimized, thinking I could share the screen easily. And it's, hold on just a second. For some reason, I can't open it back to, oh, here we go. Okay. So many people on this call. Let me know when you see it.
I see it. I see it, Luanne. Yep.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and start from the beginning and welcome everyone. Yes, we are talking about the year 2022-23 filing of the FAFSA. And we're going to do our best to get me through this without losing my voice, which is what has happened 3 years, I think, in running, Debbie. But this is me standing in front of my office door, and the behind me is I do have an individual office in the town of Warrenton, Virginia. I've been doing this for 15 plus years. I started in financial services in 1999 and got to see how much education debt was on credit reports and realized there had to have been a better way. So, but that's enough about me. Let's go ahead and get started because there's a lot of information. So I truly believe everyone should file the FAFSA. I've had clients that are 7-figure income earners, and we've filed the FAFSA for them. You just never know what's going to happen. But I mean, gosh, look at what we've just been through in the last 18 months. Who would have ever thought that a virus would bring the whole world to its knees? So there's good reasons to file the FAFSA. Is it a pain? Yes, but it's not as bad as what most people think. But there are so many errors that parents make, that students make, and it's just because of not thinking that it is as important as it is and kind of rushing through it. So I'm hoping that you'll take the information that we're giving you this evening and take the recording tomorrow or the next day when Debbie gets it out, and listen to it again and stop the screens and take some notes and such. And if you do that, it's worth the time. You'll get through it without any stress or headaches. So why do we file the FAFSA?
Sorry, Luanne, maybe you can also just address, because I feel like there's like this anxiety about, I've got to do it right now, so like just a little bit about like timing, like is it going to break anybody's aid if they wait a week or 15 days?
No, it's not. So, I watched the Facebook page at this time, especially. The questions and the comments and what, there's just so much misinformation. But you do, the one thing that was pretty standard is all the old timers were saying, no, you don't have to do it right away. You've got to wait because of the glitches. I was doing this demo presentation the day before the October 1st, and I got kicked out 3 times. So, you got to get through the glitches. And it takes about a week and a half to 2 weeks before all those glitches clear up. It's just like any software that's developed, whether it's Apple or Microsoft or whatnot. Everybody hates it when it first comes out because there's so many glitches. But we have to get through the glitches for the programmers to figure out, okay, that didn't work and we've got it fixed. So it's not going to be any different with the FAFSA. There were a lot of changes to the interface and the way that it looks and such. So there's going to be a lot of downtime. Heck, I was just trying to show one of my clients this afternoon. We went over to studentaid.gov to register for the FSA ID, and it just cycled and cycled and cycled. So there's a lot of traffic on the sites right now. Don't panic. Even the states, and I'll go over this, the states that do tie the FAFSA to their state aid application, they're not going to run out of money overnight. So just listen to what we've got to share this evening and know that, you know, you're not going to lose out on everything by waiting another week. So why do we do the FAFSA? Why do we file it? To find out where your household income is on the federal poverty level. And so if you are on that federal poverty level, then you could qualify for Pell Grant, for the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, Teacher Assistance Grant, excuse me, Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant. So there's grants that are eligible, but you've got to, you know, you're looking at very low incomes, and we'll be going over that. Also, it's for your student to be able to have access to the federal student loans. The loans are financial aid. Whether we like it or not, it is financial aid, as well as the Parent Direct Plus loan. If you don't file the FAFSA, you have no access to any of that, as well as the federal work study. That is financial aid. So why would work study be better than, say, a job off campus at McDonald's? Your work study earnings do not have to be included in a student's income for the following year FAFSA. And so that's a pretty big deal. So I've used this slide for years and years. This is the simplified view of the financial aid delivery system. So as you can see, it's not very simple, but this is a simple explanation. They take the parent and the student's income and assets, the age of the oldest parent, how many are in college, how many are in your household, comes up with, a calculation, a magic calculation to come up with your expected family contribution, the dreaded EFC. And yes, EFC, and who knows, it was supposed to, the changes were going to happen next year. It's been put off to 24, 25, and I've heard it might be put off even longer. Department of Education doesn't work very fast. So just be aware, there is going to be a change. It's going to be called the Student Aid Index. All it is a name change. Pretty much, it's because they know that everybody hates the EFC because it literally doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, but it's the system that we have. So what does the EFC mean if you get a 0 EFC? Does that mean that you can go to college for free? I see that a lot. Gosh, my EFC is $1,238. That's all I'm going to have to pay for college. And they're very excited. That is just a big no, no, no. The EFC is just the minimum amount that you will be expected to pay out of pocket before being eligible to receive any financial need-based aid coming from the government. Then it's going to depend on the schools and the cost of attendance minus your EFC is going to equal the need or the gap that's left. How is the school going to address that? We've all heard, there are schools that meet 100% of financial need, but then there's a secret sauce formula that's part of that. Okay, of that 100% of need, how much of it is going to be in grants and scholarships, and how much of it is going to be in what? Loans and self-help. So there's more to all of this than just filing the FAFSA, but that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The FAFSA is just, it is a number and it's a necessary evil. All of the other, the planning for what your EFC would be or what the outcome of it is planning before and after. That's so important. Now, there's all kinds of resources out there. So most of the information I'm giving you is coming from all of these resources. I have been on, in the last week and a half, on 6 hours of listening to other, other financial aid gurus, the federal financial aid, which is enough to, put you to sleep. But this is what I do. I love what I do, and I love helping families. So, but there are the resources out there. Just be aware when you call what I call the FAFSA hotline, the 800 number. If you've got a somewhat tricky question, call back again. You'll get a different person, and let's hope that you get the same answer twice. And if you don't, just keep calling back until you have a couple of people that have given you the same answer in a row. This is, go to the studentaid.gov, go to the FAFSA toolkit. There's just a wealth of information out there that could end up, saving you thousands of dollars. So where do we start? We start with registering to get an FSA ID. So once again, everything now is under the umbrella of studentaid.gov. It used to be we'd go to FAFSA.ed and someplace else, but they've put everything under that umbrella, which is really handy. And so the FSA ID is your electronic signature. So you need it to file the FAFSA. You need it to log in to the FAFSA. And before I forget, the FAFSA belongs to your student. It is not yours, the parent. And I'm assuming the bulk of the people on here tonight are parents. So I'm talking to parents. If you students are on here, just keep nudging your parent. She's talking about you, mom or dad, or now she's talking about me. So you've got to pay attention to the screens as far as what information they're asking for, whether it's a student or a parent. But the FAFSA belongs to the student. The parent needs an FSA ID just to be able to electronically sign, and submit along with the student. And this is going to be with you for as many years as you have children in college, and as many years as if you're taking the Parent Plus loans. It's going to be how you're going to log into the system for your Plus loans. Your students are going to log into the system for their student loans. And if anyone is going to take advantage of the public service loan forgiveness, your FSA ID is going to stay with you for quite some time. So it's tied to your Social Security number, and it needs to be verified with Social Security that your name ties to what they have on record with your Social Security number. So for any of you moms out there that have maybe changed your name when you married and then you divorced, and you didn't change your name and you've remarried, and whatever is on your tax return is not lined up with Social Security, you're going to have a problem. How do I know? Because I had a client that happened to. So you don't want to wait until the last minute to find these things out. So now is a good time to log in and create your FSA ID. You'll need your social, and your student should be doing this as well, with your mobile phone number and your email address. So you go to the studentaid.gov site, you're going to create an account, create your username and your case sensitive password. And then you're going to create the account. It's going to take you to a page. It's going to ask for your birth date, your social, your email. Don't use your students' school email accounts. use a Gmail account or their own personal. Same with you. If you think that you might be leaving your employer, use your own personal email, because this is going to last for quite some time. I saw somebody ask today, she logged in and did the FAFSA for her student. Her student doesn't have an FSA ID. So I'm assuming she put all of her information in there. She created an account for herself as a parent, not for the student. Happens all the time. So don't let it happen to you after listening to tonight. You want to verify your cell phone with, they'll send you a text. You want to verify your email. They're going to send you an email. Go ahead and verify those links. And then the last thing, you're going to create 4 questions and answers that are the security questions and answers. So that when you go in to log in next year and you don't remember what the password is and you get locked out after 3 times, this is the only way that you'll be able to get back in and recreate a new password. So please, please, please write all of this down. Keep it in a safe place that you'll remember where you put it. So what documents do you need to get started? Pretty much get everything financial. You'll need your Social Security cards for this year, the 2020 tax return. Now, I know so many people, their 2020 tax return does not reflect what their 2021 income is. Everybody has been had issues because of COVID and what's going on. The schools know this, but the reality is within the system, you still have to use your 2020 income. My suggestion, if you have had those challenges with unemployment or job loss or God forbid, family loss, and it has had a major impact in your income, you get your 2021 taxes done as soon as possible. So you've got that documentation to follow up with. And then the schools were inundated this year with special circumstances forms, and they know that they're going to have the same thing again next year. There's no other way around this. So gather up all of your financials, your bank statements, your investment accounts, real estate information. And when I say real estate, you want to gather both your residential, your primary home, but as well as your, if you've got a beach house or you've got, a condo that you rent or such, because you're going to need all of this same information for filing the CSS profile. And that is even more painful than the FAFSA. 529 plans. Gather up your 529 statements, as well as for any of you that have prepaid tuition accounts, call your administrator and find out what is the current value of those prepaid tuition accounts. Same thing, with savings bonds. So everything financial. And oh my gosh, they have this list on the FAFSA as well in the resources. So 2020 tax return. And for those of you that don't file your FAFSA until January or February or next June, you're still going to use the 2020 tax return for the 2022-23 college year. I hope that's clear as mud. So this was what the login looked like last year. So for those of you that are, had students last year, you'll recognize this. But this is the new FAFSA. interface. And I really like it. I think it's much cleaner, and it's supposed to, last year, you couldn't go between the mobile app and the desktop app. I never use the mobile app. I always use the desktop. I've got old eyes and fat fingers. So, I'm not going to do something as important as the FAFSA on my phone. But this year, it's all, you can start it on your phone and continue it on your desktop, which you could not do last year. So you can see I'm a student, I am a parent, I am a preparer. So if you're something that has changed from what has changed in years past is I would always tell parents, you know what, you just log in as the student. And I'm just going to give a disclaimer here. I don't believe that a student should be sitting and doing their FAFSA by themselves. And I don't believe that the parent should be, sitting somewhere else and doing the FAFSA by themselves. Do it together, side by side. And there's less mistakes that way. Why would you put a 17-year-old in charge of something that could end up, saving you or costing you tens of thousands of dollars? It's not fair to them. That's my personal opinion. But so in years past, I would always log in as the student and input everything. And if you have multiple students in your household, you get to the end and it would say, okay, we see that you have a sibling. Would you like to transfer this information over to their account? And it would just be you'd click and it would go ahead and transfer. I didn't see that for this year. So now it's going to show up only when it's the parent that is submitting the FAFSA, or I shouldn't say submitting, but inputting the data. So if you log in as the parent, you're going to need your student's name, their date of birth, social security number, which is kind of the reason why they created the FSA ID in the first place, so that you didn't have to keep putting those identifiers out there. But sometimes it just takes a while for all of this to meld together, I guess. So we are back as the student. So I'm a student and want to access the FAFSA form. So they're going to go ahead and log in because they've already logged in with their FSA ID, which is the username and password. And here's some legalese for them to read. You just accept it, because if you decline, you're not going to file the FAFSA. Pure and simple. So one, you'll see down in the corner, the FSA ID was matched. So that's a positive. You're going to see there's 2 FAFSA years to log into. This is where most people make a very common mistake. They log into the wrong FAFSA. So we did not find a 2022-23 FAFSA form on file for you. You get that because this is a renewing applicant. So it's just simple. Renew my FAFSA form, and it's just going to go, the personal information is there, and it's easy peasy to just go ahead and continue on. But for those of you, this is your first time, your first student, your FAFSA virgins, you're going to make sure that you start the 2022-23 FAFSA form. And if you do that, you'll have one less headache. Now, the next screen, create a save key. Keep it as simple as possible. I typically just put the student's first name, all lowercase. If they have 3 or less letters in their name, you're going to have to come up with something else. But just keep it something simple that you're going to remember, because if you get booted out because the system went down, or you have to log out and get some more information because you didn't listen to me and gather up all your financials, when you log back in, the first thing that's going to come up with is, what is your save key? And then that way you can go right back to where you had stopped. Otherwise, you have to restart all over again. Now, you'll see, once again, there's a ton of resources here. So these drop downs are there to, help you, walk you through what documents do I need to complete? How do I sign? All of these things. It's all there for you. So this is, I really like the look of this. It's just so clean and neat. And I love that it says student demographics, student, dependent, parent demographics, student financials. You're always going to know what screen you're on, so you know what information to input. So personal information for the student. And I'm going to go through some of these that are just don't need an explanation quickly. You can go slower with the replay so that we can get through this in a timely manner. Residency. Have you lived in your state for 5 years? Yes or no? Are you a US citizen? This I wanted to point out to you because I didn't see this with the demo that I had, because it was Maryland. And Maryland is not a state that has a student aid application. So this is from last year. If you live in Iowa, Minnesota, Mississippi, New York, Pennsylvania, or Vermont, when you indicate your state, it's going to come up with this notification that your FAFSA in your state have a student aid application that's going to combine. It's going to show up on the very last page of the FAFSA just before you submit. So don't miss it, because if you miss it, then it's gone forever. I have these little red crosses next to New Jersey because I found out the other day, New Jersey is no longer going to have this student aid application tied to the FAFSA. So it sounds like there's going to be less financial aid coming from the state of New Jersey. And if you get distracted, you miss answering, it's not going to let you go forward. You're going to get these red boxes. Hey, we need an answer. Student education. I get this every year. Well, my student has dual enrollment credits. They've got 60 credits. They're going to go in as a junior. No, they're not. They're going in as a never attended college first year if they did dual enrollment credits through their high school. Now, once they get to college, then it's up to the advisor there. They'll let you know how many of those credits are going to transfer and whatnot. But as far as you entering, you're going to be never attended college first year if it's dual enrollment credits. And I always suggest saying yes for work study. As I stated before, a work study job, it is financial, it comes under financial need-based aid. So many of you are not, your child is not going to qualify for work study if you don't qualify for financial need-based aid. But if there are jobs still available on campus, your student could get a work study job. And then, what it is the federal government pays the bulk of the student's salary. So it's not coming from the school, and that salary does not get counted on the FAFSA for the student for the following year. Student selective service. So I'm going to go over this slowly so everybody understands. If you are a young male, 18 and over, you must register for selective service. And what does this have to do with FAFSA? Well, up until this year, if you didn't, you could not have any access to any federal aid or federal loans. Now, because there's been a big brouhaha over this, they've changed. And so it's not going to have an impact on FAFSA or the federal grants or federal loans anymore. It's still important for young men to register when they turn 18. It's a federal law, but it's not going to have an impact on FAFSA. Unfortunately, they don't move that quickly, so they couldn't get the questions off of this year's FAFSA form. So if your child, male child, is under 18, are you registered with selective service? No. Do you want us to register with selective service? No, because they're not going to do it anymore. When he turns 18, he goes to the post office, or there may be online, and go ahead and register with selective service. So the financial aid administrators understand that they couldn't get the question off of the form, that it's not going to be detrimental to any students, and they will deal with it on their end so that your student will still be able to qualify for federal aid in the form of loans or grants. So it doesn't affect females at all. They haven't had to register with selective service yet. I have a feeling that's going to change. So student driver's license, it's their driver's license number, not their permit. And if they don't have anything, there's no red asterisk on here. So this could be a screen that can be completely ignored. I get a lot of questions about this. Gosh, I went to college and I didn't finish my associates, or I went straight to a 4-year and I didn't finish. So this is the highest school completed. So you would put high school if you didn't finish. If you finished your associates or you finished your undergrad, it's college or beyond. Why is this important? Because if a child is coming from a family that hasn't completed a college degree, then they're considered first generation, and there may be some aid assistance. So it's not a knock on those parents that have not completed their college degree. Adding the high school, you can do a search on city and state. I am constantly amazed at how many don't know the full name of their high school. It's abbreviated or nickname or such. It's pretty funny. Those of you that you're homeschoolers, and you can go ahead and manually input your high school information as well. It's going to come up, confirm this is your high school and continue. So it brings you to the college search screen. So this is where it says, okay, you may qualify for federal student aid. We're going to go ahead and continue. And now you're going to start adding colleges. So you can add up to 10 colleges on the FAFSA. And what you want to make sure that you're going to do is take a look at your deadline dates. Are you applying early action and what those dates are? Because some schools have priority FAFSA filing, and it's not next week. So once again, don't panic about not getting your FAFSA in right away. But the other schools cannot see what schools that you're applying to. But what you should do, if your student is applying to schools in your state flagship universities, you want to put them at the top of the list. Just in the event, if they do offer some state aid, they'll see that their schools are at the top of the list and they'll grant that aid. How do they know it's at the top of the list? I just honestly, I don't know anymore. But that's in the directions. So I'm a big follower of directions. So you can search by the college, school name, city, state, or you can search by their federal school code. So I've got St. Mary's College of Maryland here. That's one of the schools that one of my clients are applying to this year. And so you see the federal school code, in-state and out-of-state tuition and required fees. Just tuition and fees, has nothing to do with the rest of the costs. But look down here. This information is updated quarterly. So do not take this as cast in stone. It's only going to cost me X amount of dollars. Now, what you do need to be concerned with, so we have St. Mary's College of Maryland. Oh, goodness, we have Mount St. Mary's University in Maryland. Make sure that the college that you're putting on the FAFSA is the correct college that your student is applying to. Same thing, all the California schools, the UCs, the Pennsylvania schools, I mean, they all kind of sound the same. You just make sure that you are inputting the right information. A few years ago, I had a student who, mom kept saying Amherst, Amherst, Amherst. It was UMass Amherst, not Amherst College. They sent the FAFSA to the wrong school. So you see these little arrows over here on the side. If you, as you're filing your FAFSA and you think, oh, that's right, Luanne said we need to put our state universities at the top, you can you can move up and down the colleges without having to delete it, which is a really nice little feature. And then you can add more schools. Now, if you have more than 10 schools, what you're going to do, complete the FAFSA, get it submitted. It's going to take about 3 to 5 days for your student to receive the student aid report, the SAR. It's going to come to the student in their email address. It's a good time for you to remind your children to start checking their email and checking their spam as well. And because they're dealing with your student, not with you. You just pay the check. They don't care about anything else. So, sorry, my sarcasm. But if you have more than 10 schools, once you get that SAR, that means that the schools have been notified, they've received your FAFSA. You can now log back in, make a correction, and delete the 10 schools that are on the list, and now input those other schools that you are going to be applying to. I had one family last year, their daughter applied to 35 schools. It was just crazy. So the next is, what's your housing plan? On campus, with parent, or off campus? And then you're going to add more schools. So now, once again, student marital status. Some parents, they really get annoyed over this one. Some, students are adults. We go back as adults to college. The FAFSA is not just for our high school students. So, it's everybody can file the FAFSA. And looky here, I got bumped off. So this is the notice that I received, and I had to go back to the page and restart again. So, and that was before it opened, for crying out loud. So does the student have dependents? Do they support children? They support with more than half of their support from their own income, as well as other dependents other than children or spouse. So just, pay attention to who the screen is for. And so what makes a dependent student? Just because You are not going to, have them on your tax return. They're independent for taxes, but they're not independent for college. So the tax return and FAFSA, you get a lot of the same information, but it's not a mirror image. So what you file on the tax return is very different than the FAFSA. So a dependent student will be considered dependent until they're at least 24 years of age or older, or they're serving active duty in the military, or they've gotten a discharge or honorable discharge from the military, or if they were, in foster care or a dependent ward of the court at any time since they turned 13. I hate that whole emancipated minor thing. It is not anything to mess around with. It's not an easy way to make your child become independent. And even if they are independent, they don't get bucket loads of money from the government to go to college. It's not anything different. So if you can answer none of these, your child is a dependent. And or were they homeless or self-supporting? If the answer is no, once again, they are considered a dependent student. And I will provide information about my parents. Now, if you as a parent said, I'm not going to provide my information, I don't want the government to see my assets, or I don't believe in this, or whatever, just know your child is not going to get their EFC calculated, and they're going to have to follow up with the financial aid administrator at the college to see, can they receive any kind of assistance. And usually it's just in the unsubsidized loans. So this is another one that we need to kind of take some time with. So who is my parent? And with, blended families and everything, it does, there is some gray area here. So I'm going to go to the next screen because I broke it down for you. There is an incredible infographic that is at the studentaid.gov that you can find, and it walks you through yes or no and so on. But so if my parents live together, they're married or unmarried, they're both of their information is going to be on the FAFSA. If you and your biological, the two biological parents have never gotten legally married, but everybody lives under the same household, you're considered kind of, a married couple in the eyes of FAFSA. My parents are divorced or separated, and I live with one parent more than the other. Pay attention to this, please, because this is going to change in a couple of years. So right now, let's just use an example. Debbie is the mom, and she and her husband this is just a fake example because I know she's very happily married, and it's his birthday, so we all have to say happy birthday. So they divorced, and each of them have a new spouse. Debbie has her son more than 51% of the year living with her. So she is going to be the parent and the parent's household between Debbie and the step parent. Even if that step parent says, I have no financial responsibility for college for your son, that doesn't matter. It's still going to be that household. Now, if you're divorced or separated and you live with both parents equally, 50-50, because you can't let the other one have an extra week, because this is probably why you split up in the first place. You can't get along or agree on anything. So it's going to be the parent that provides the most financial support. And when the FAFSA simplification goes into effect, this is going to be what is going to happen in the future. So there will no longer be, well, I make less money and the student stays with me longer, and it's going to be beneficial for my household to file the FAFSA because my income and assets are so much less than my ex's. Going forward, whether it's going to happen next year or the following year, it's going to be the parent that provides the most financial support. So the child support and it is going to be playing a major factor as well. So keep that in mind as you're making your plans right now. What is that change going to have an impact on us as we go to file future FAFSAs? And I wish I could tell you that exactly this is going to happen next year or the year after. I can't, because they keep changing, they keep changing that goalpost. So,
Luanne, do you mind addressing, because there's a lot of questions of a parent that has passed away, and does the surviving parent need to fill out any information for the deceased parent?
If they passed away for 2020?
Yes. I guess even to define, if it was if they passed away between 2020 and now or before 2020.
Right. So there is a question, it is the parent deceased. I'm dealing with that with one of my clients right now. Dad passed away in March, and we're going through the whole process of appealing for the grant money. It was at a school that gives 100% financial need. When Dad was living, the family couldn't qualify for any need-based aid. But now that Dad is gone, no retirement, Mom is surviving on Social Security, Dad's Social Security. So we've put in an appeal, and it's just such a convoluted process, unbelievable. So it's a situation where you would indicate that the parent is deceased. You have to have the death certificate, and then you're going to file special circumstances form after, in 2022. We're all in such a big hurry to file the FAFSA right now, and the CSS profile. They're not even going to get looked at for quite some time. So those special circumstances forms are going to be going in after once 2022 starts. So you definitely would want to get your tax return for 2021 done as soon as possible.
So just to be clear, if a parent has passed away before 2020, what does somebody need to do? And if a parent has passed away between 2020 and today, is there something different they need to do?
If it was before 2020, if the parent's income is showing up in 2020, you're going to be able to indicate the parent is deceased. There's a question on the FAFSA for that. So their income is going to be, if it was only there for the whole year in 2020 or partial year, but there's going to be the special circumstances forms that you're going to have to fill out, the death certificate, So it just kind of depends at where in the process the parent passed away. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Parent marital status now, married month and year. And if they've been divorced or separated, month or year. And another thing, separated. Right now, you do not have to have a formal separation. As long as you're separated and living in other, in a different household. You cannot, if you, going back to who's my parent, if you are separated and one spouse is living in the basement and the other spouse is living upstairs, as far as FAFSA is concerned, you're still living together. So both of your information will go on the FAFSA. If you are separated and living in a different address altogether, then they will accept that separation. Going forward, when they make the changes, it's going to be either a legal separation or a divorce, not I've moved out and we've decided to separate. It's going to be a legal separation or a complete divorce, which is, I don't know why they're making these changes, but is something to be aware of. And then, which parent's information is going to be provided in that case. Is it mom or dad's? And they're talking about biological. So the first parent, you want to be consistent, and it doesn't have to be the parent that is first on, the tax return or such. Typically, whichever parent is the one that's going to have the FSA ID, who's going to be on top of this, is usually when I'm inputting information, that's who the first parent is going to be. If it's a step parent, then typically they're going to be the second parent information. Did your parents become legal residents of their state before, whatever, just answer the questions. If they didn't, then make sure, enter the date for your parent who has lived in the state the longest. And your parents' dependents. Once again, this can get a little bit gray. So if you're a blended household and you've got kids in your house all the time, your own children and your new spouse's children are visiting like every other week or weekend or such, as long as you're still supporting half of their financial support, then they're counted in your household as a dependent. Has nothing to do with the tax return, has nothing to do with who declares who is a dependent on the tax return. This is just for FAFSA. Same thing if, let's say, a grandparent is living in your home. If you're currently supporting them more than half of their support, then they are counted as an individual in your household. And that's a big deal because, that can, it's an honest reflection of your household, and it does have an impact on your EFC. Now, the number in college, your high school student that you're applying submitting the FAFSA for is considered one in college. Because remember, this is for the year that they will be in college. Now, if you have another student that is at least half-time in college, whether it's community college or four-year university, you'll count them. You do not include yourself as the parent. If you're going to college, you don't include yourself on your student's FAFSA. If you file a FAFSA, you can include your children as college, number in college on your FAFSA. So this is the screen that I love to hate, because now we're at the IRS data retrieval tool, the DRT. If any of you have listened to me in the past, you know I do not like the DRT. It's I think it's too much government in here, too many glitches over the years, and there's not enough transparency with this. But in a couple of years, even I'm not going to have an option because it's going to be automatic, which I really do not like. So the data retrieval tool for you newbies means that if you have completed your 2020 tax return, and this is your federal, has nothing to do with state, and you haven't gotten an amended return, you have no tax fraud where somebody has compromised your social security number so you can't electronically file your taxes. There's a couple of issues of people that can't use the DRT. If you don't have any of those issues, then you can use the DRT, and oh my gosh, it's a couple of clicks and you're going to go over to the IRS site, you're going to input your information, you're going to click, and the IRS is going to give all of your tax information into the FAFSA, and oh, you're done. I don't know why that Luanne said that this was so horrible, but the reality is that when it does transfer that over, you don't see what it transfers. All it says is transferred by the IRS. You don't see any of that data. So there's been issues with overstating income, especially if someone had a rollover. Well, how many people, had to access their qualified retirement accounts in the last 18 months because that's the only place that they had money, that or 529 plans because of what COVID did or such. There's going to be so many things that are going to be a little bit squirrely on tax returns this year. I wouldn't trust the DRT at all. So if this is your first time filing, I always recommend you manually input your information, just like what we used to have to do in the good olden days of 6 years ago and before. So it might take you another 15 or 20 minutes, but the reality is if you use the DRT and you had a rollover or you had unemployment or a multitude of things that could have skewed the data that got transferred from the IRS, you can't correct it. FAFSA can't correct it. The only one that can correct it is going to be the financial aid director at the colleges that you submitted the FAFSA to. So how much time do you think that's going to take out of your day for calling 10 colleges and trying to get a hold of the financial aid director and put on hold and do all of that runaround? Or take another 15 minutes and manually input your FAFSA information or your tax information into the FAFSA. So now, if you're say, to heck with this, I'm going to go ahead and go to the IRS because I got to go watch the Patriots and the Buccaneers, which the game is probably getting ready to finish. Tom Brady fan here. So here is a wonderful infographic that tells you step by step what you're going to do when you go to use the data retrieval tool. So excuse me, you can go to the FAFSA or the studentaid.gov site and get this infographic. But primarily, it's super simple. You're going to log in with your FSA ID, username and password. It has to sync up with the IRS and Social Security. You'll get over to the IRS site. You're going to input your information. It has to match exactly what is on your federal 1040. So if your CPA or your accountant misspelled your name, put a wrong address, you input that incorrect information. You're eventually going to have to get it corrected, but if you don't match it exactly, it's not going to let you complete that data retrieval. Once you get that, it's going to go over, and then you're almost done. Now we're going to go into how you file manually, but I wanted to put this income protection allowance screen in here to let you know that all of this is already calculated inside the FAFSA. So I've had a couple of people that have seen these this information and thought, oh, geez, I have this allowance, so I'm going to input this number somewhere, and you're not going to do that. But what this is just telling you that for if you've got, say, 4 people in your household with 1 child in college, your first $30,190 of your income is not going to be assessed on the FAFSA. Anything after that is going to be assessed anywhere from 22 to 47%. So it's going to depend on your income and your tax bracket. Nobody is going to like their EFC. No one is going to like it. So if you use the DRT and you have this figure and you're looking at it like, oh my gosh, that can't possibly be right, there's got to be a mistake. You're not going to know, once again, because you don't see the data that was transferred, and you start questioning. And then you have to remember what I said, the only one that can make that correction or even look at it is the financial aid director at the schools. So once again, that's my infomercial for not using the DRT. So just like when you say you're online and you've got something in a shopping cart and you close out because you didn't have your credit card, or you had to go out, you're going to get a reminder. Hey, you forgot us. Don't you want to finish your transaction? They're going to do the same thing. Hey, applying is faster and easier using the DRT. My recommendation, say no thanks and proceed to the IRS. This little disclaimer in this box here, you may not have to provide additional IRS documentation. Everybody is afraid of having verification. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you qualify for financial need-based aid, you're going to be asked for verification, whether you use the DRT or not. And the verification is not anything to fear. It's just sometimes you have to verify the people in your household, or you might have to upload your tax return or such, because they're not going to take your word for it. So if you aren't going to file, maybe your income just comes from Social Security disability and you don't make enough money to have to file, or for some other reason you're not going to file your taxes, you can't use the DRT. Or if you're going to file, you haven't filed yet, you obviously you can't use it. So then based on your responses, we're going to take you to manually transfer. And I'm just here to show you everything is just laid out for you. Every direction is either on the page or you see that little question mark there, you click on it, it opens up the directions on where you're going to get that information. So note that you're on the parents' information. Parents' information. You're going to get the AGI off of 1040 line 11. Once again, here's the directions from when you click on the question mark. So it's really simple. Just take your time, and it is kind of step by step. It's going to walk you through it. So those of you that have students that have been, pumping out those essays and those scholarship applications, more power to them. But sometimes if you receive more scholarship money than can pay for qualified education expenses, you're gonna have some tax to pay on that. I would still rather pay the tax than have to pay all of that money out of pocket. So it's not a bad deal. It will have you will have gotten the information, from the IRS and from the college. So untaxed portions of IRA distributions and pensions. This is your rollover. So if you see on your tax return, you've got that rollover, you are not going to put it on here. You're going to exclude it. Most of the time, the DRT does not exclude it. It rolls it over. And let's just say you had a $500,000 IRA that you rolled over to a different administrator. The DRT will add $500,000 to your income. And there goes your EFC. And then you have to have that burden of getting it corrected. So don't you do the same thing as the DRT does. And this next one, a lot of people make the mistake of putting their 401k contributions or qualified plan contributions here off of their W-2. This is just if you've done a Schedule 1. And so once again, just kind of follow the directions. So this screen, child support, your parents paid because of divorce. And then here's another screen, child support received. So don't confuse the two. And this is going to change in the next year or two. Child support received will no longer be count as untaxed income, which is a really great thing. It's going to count as an asset. So assets are assessed at 5.64%. Your income can be assessed anywhere from 22 to 47%. So if you can have that child support over in the asset column, it's definitely going to be beneficial for your EFC. If you're on the receiving end, if you're on the paying end, then you're not going to get that deduction on the FAFSA because you paid child support. So payments to tax deferred pension and retirement savings plans. Remember the FAFSA starts with tell us your AGI, your adjusted gross income, which does not include the payments that you're contributing to your tax deferred retirement accounts. They're going to show up on your W-2. So this is why you need to don't give your accountant your W-2 and or lose it. You want to keep your W-2s because it's going to show your contributions to your deferred plans, and not just your retirement contributions, but if you contribute to a health savings account or an FSA or such, anything deferred, you're going to add that back because the government wants to see what your income was. They don't care that you deferred it. Now, one of the big mistakes you're going to get this information from box 12 on the W-2, and it's like 12A through 12D in the different codes. If you have something in the box of 12 double D, that is typically your employer contributions toward your employee health benefits. And you don't include that. And oftentimes that is a much higher figure than what the average family is contributing to their 401k. So don't make that mistake, because once again, it's going to raise your EFC considerably. Parent assets is always a big question. So there is an asset protection allowance, as small as it is. And I'm going to share with you, I've been saying for several years that the asset protection allowance is going to go away. It's going to be zero, like it is for students. Students do not have an asset protection allowance. This is the first year that I have seen all zeros in the column for a single parent or an unmarried student. Complete zero. So there is no asset protection allowance for the single parent. Why? I have no answer. But so the example that I shared, we'll go back here. As of today, your parents' current assets, if they exceed, do they exceed $4,900? It never fails after we've done one of these walkthroughs and that answer has been there. People are thinking, well, they showed on the walkthrough that I don't, my assets, if they don't total that exact amount on the screen. So it's individual for, it goes by the age of the oldest parent. So, but I'll tell you, 10 years ago, that figure would have been probably about $52,000, not $4,900. So I truly believe that it's going to go away. So as of today, so when we're filing the income, it's prior, 2 years prior, but your assets are as of the day that you're filing. And, it can be within the week. So you want to get what your balance is in your checking, your savings, your money market, your CDs, anything cash related. And if you've got cash sitting in a safe deposit box, this is, I've seen, put it under the mattress or just take it out, write yourself a check and don't cash it. Those are all the wrong answers. So you must disclose the state of your assets. And it doesn't matter if you have taken out a cash, you've taken out refinance your mortgage, you took a cash out, that money is going to pay for a new roof. And because of all the restrictions that we've got going on with getting materials, it's, now it's been delayed until January. And that money is earmarked for my roof, my new kitchen. It's whatever it's earmarked for, it doesn't matter. If it's in your account, you have to disclose it. If your investments will include your stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate investment, other than your primary residence. It is very difficult to be able to consider real estate as under a business. It has to have specific, you have to offer cleaning services and other services, kind of like if you were, had a hotel. So to have an extra townhouse or a condo or another, single family home that you rent out, that's truly not considered a business. So you're still going to have to disclose the equity in that real estate property minus whatever the mortgage is, so it's going to be, your net cost. If you have a family-owned business that has no non-family partners and has less than 100 employees, you do not have to disclose your business assets. That is also going to go away. Why they're making these changes, I honestly don't know. Middle income America is going to get hit very hard in the next couple of years when it comes to paying for college. But for right now, you don't have to declare those business assets on your FAFSA. If you're going to be applying to schools that have the CSS profile, you're going to have to disclose those business assets.
So Luanne, I know that I could wait till the end, but this is relevant to what you just talked about. Just go over a little bit again about 529 money, what needs to be declared as an asset for the parent. What if you have money saved in 529s for your other kids? Because that's a big question we have being asked here and that people sent in earlier.
So the 529 accounts are a parent asset. It's not a student asset, it's a parent asset. So if you have 4 children and you've got 4 different 529 accounts, you're going to disclose all 4 of those accounts. Now, if a grandparent has a 529 or an aunt or an uncle or a friend, that 529 is not going to show up anywhere right now. The way that it stands right now, if you needed that outside source 529, and this goes for divorced couples as well. If you have divorced and there's going to be, a 529 only has one parent listed as the owner. So that parent that has the 529, if they're not the one that is filing the FAFSA, that 529 account does not show up on the FAFSA. But if you have to use that money in that first year, the following year when you file the FAFSA, it's now going to show up as income for the student. So, there needs to be some planning that is done with that. If that's going to be the case where you absolutely have to use that outside source 529 for this year, then it can be transferred. So a grandparent can transfer it to their adult child, and the ex-spouse can transfer it to their ex-spouse if they trust each other.
And to just maybe clarify, the reason why you're recommending this is really because of the percentages of how the money is assessed.
Correct, because the parent asset is assessed at 5.64%. A student's income can be assessed at almost 50% on the dollar.
So the money that might be used out of this 529, if it's being held by somebody outside the FAFSA, and it gets used and then reported as a student income, it actually can hurt the student much more than if it was just moved to be a parent asset.
Correct. It's going to increase the EFC considerably, depending on how much was distributed from the 529. Now, this is something that is going to change as well for the better, because once they do the FAFSA Simplification Act, then those outside 529s aren't going to count anywhere. It's going to be a gift that just doesn't show up on the FAFSA. The thing is, we don't know if that's going to happen next year or the year later. So once again, there's a lot of planning that needs to go into that. But a 529 is always considered a parent asset. So the assets, I guess it's easier to say, what assets do you not include? And so in your primary residence, the equity in your home is not assessed on the FAFSA. If you have an UGMA or an UTMA account, Uniform Gift to Minors or Uniform Trust to Minor, that is not a parent asset. That is going to count heavily on the student. So it's going to reduce their aid eligibility. A student's assets are assessed at 20%. And there, once again, there is no asset protection allowance. So if your CPA said, oh, create an UGMA or an UTMA so that you'll pay less in taxes, you might have gotten, a tax break, but it's going to come back and bite you when it comes time for FAFSA. So if you have, the only good thing about that, different from a 529, is if you have other children that also have an UGMA or an UTMA, it's not going to show up on their older sibling who's filing the FAFSA, because this is a student asset. It has nothing to do with the parent. If you've got cash value life insurance, whole life, universal life, variable universal life, if you've got cash in those accounts, that is not disclosed on the FAFSA or the CSS profile for that matter. The same thing with annuities. You do not have to disclose your annuity, whether it's qualified or non-qualified. And an ABLE account, which is an account for hold disability expenses for another child in the family, that does not have to be disclosed, as well as the balances of your qualified retirement accounts. So there is a difference between what you distinguish between qualified retirement and what you call your retirement. If you don't have your retirement monies in a tax deferred qualified plan, then although you have it earmarked for your retirement, it is not a qualified retirement plan, and it will have to be disclosed on the FAFSA. So you just make sure you understand that distinction. So these are the things that you do not have to assess or disclose on the FAFSA. Everything else financial, you do. So I know that there's always a lot of questions about that.
One more question about assets, Luanne, is how do you value the a second property? Like what resources can you use?
You can go to Zillow, you can go to your tax records or, your property value, and you subtract you find the lowest documented value, and then subtract your any liability that you have, and what's left is your value. And before I forget, also, I know I said it before, but prepaid tuition accounts is another form of a 529. And you have to call the administrator and get the value of that account. And that is also a parent asset. So if your student filed taxes, a tax return, then they can also use the IRS DRT tool. If they're not going to file, obviously, if they made, I think you can make up to $12,000 and not have to file a tax return. So if they still received a W-2, you still have to input what they received from their earnings, just like you would the same questions on the parent screen. Now, this money paid or received on your behalf, once again, that's where we're having, untaxed income. That's where if a distribution from the 529 from a grandparent or from a friend or whatever, that's where this would go. I had a client a couple of years ago whose grandfather was paying for their grandchild's private high school tuition. And so we had to include that on, money that was received on their behalf. So student assets.
Sorry, Luanne, before you go to student assets, what about, can you just review HSA?
It would be the same thing, tax deferred. HSA, FSA, anything any kind of benefit that you have with your employer that is tax deferred, that is that's untaxed income. Student assets, I hear, some people say, oh, they've only got, $300 or $400 in their savings. I don't care if they only have $10. You're supposed to disclose their, what they have in their account. And same thing for investments and or business. And once again, I got bumped off as I was doing this right at the almost very end. So annoying. So you're not done yet. You'll get this. You still need to submit your FAFSA form. I highly, highly, highly recommend this is a page, you see where it says collapse all. You'll be able to open it up and you're going to have a printout of everything that you've just input. And if you use the DRT, you'll see transferred by the IRS in all these lines that you're wondering, I wonder what that figure was. You can go ahead and print out a copy and, just kind of take a look and make sure that, everything is correct. There's no socials that are transposed or whatever. And read, you're going to sign and submit more legalese. And then it's going to say sign the FAFSA form. Now, what's going to happen is you were logged in this case, as the student. So you don't have to re-input the FSA ID because you already did once you logged in. So now it's the parent's signature is needed. You want to make sure you remember, am I parent 1 or parent 2? You're going to input your FSA ID. And this might come up. Well, if you don't have an FSA ID for some reason, you haven't received it back yet, or there was a glitch with the IRS or Social Security with your name or whatever. So as long as the student has the FSA ID, you can, file their FAFSA. But a parent, if they don't have an FSA ID, you can print off the signature page, sign it, and mail it in. You can submit without signatures if you're expecting your FSA ID any day now. That verification from Social Security. But I caution you to do this because you might forget. I ran into a family last year. They thought that they filed the FAFSA. They never finished the signatures. So it never got submitted. The student received emails, but he didn't open the emails to see what they were about. So if you have your FSA ID, you'll go ahead and input that, hit submit, and this will show up as signed with FSA ID on both sides. And that means that everything is good. Now, do not close out this next page. So many do because they're skimming it quickly. You see where it says print this page? This is your initial student aid report. It's going to give you what your EFC is, but oftentimes this first number is a 0. So you're skimming it so fast, all you see is a 0 and some numbers, and you think that that's some sort of an account number, and you just go right by it. And you're thinking, when am I going to get my EFC? Well, you had it right there, but you didn't, you went by too quickly. And note, the EFC is not how much aid you will receive or how much you have to pay for college. It is, and just like everything college related financially, it's estimated. So, you know, they're estimating that you're going to qualify for the direct loan of $5,500. Every student, as long as the FAFSA is filed, is going to be eligible for that. It's just they don't know if you're going to get, if you don't have financial need-based aid, it's all going to be an unsubsidized loan, not anything in subsidized. So this is an example. So this EFC, $1,383. So that means that there was income of less than $40,000. And based on your EFC of 1383, you may be eligible to receive a federal Pell Grant of up to $5145. The maximum Pell Grant is $6495. You would think with this low of an EFC, they'd be able to get the maximum Pell Grant. Not even close. So you're all going to be surprised at your EFC numbers. Just make sure that you understand what it means and that it doesn't mean that the rest of it is going to get you, that you're going to get it in you know, grants and scholarships. It just doesn't, unfortunately, work that way. And here is you let's just say that you have to go in and make a correction of some sort. You realize you overstated your assets, and you go in and then you fumbled around and you thought, oh, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, and you just cancel out, or you close out of the account. If you didn't cancel that correction, then now your FAFSA account is kind of in limbo. You either have to go back in and cancel that correction, or continue it and then, you know, submit it again, because otherwise it's just going to be in limbo. So
yeah. That was, you know, so easy, only an hour and a half, but no, anyhow,
oh my God.
A question that has come up is, and I know, you know, best practice would be that you fill out the FAFSA with your student, but what if you truly just do not want your student to see some financial information?
I've seen that a lot. And the reality is that your student can always log into their FAFSA and see it anyways. So I think it's time to just have that honest conversation with them. Listen, this is mom and dad's money for our retirement. It doesn't mean that this is a free-for-all for you to go to NYU at $82,000 a year, you know, and they don't provide scholarships. So, you know, you're just going to have to deal with that however you wish, but they can always log into their FAFSA account and go in to see their student history and see exactly, because when you do the DRT, it's not going to show your income, but it's still going to show your assets, and you still have to input, even though you use the DRT, there's going to be the screen that's going to come up. What was your each parent's income? So you're going to input your income from your W-2, and you're going to see that. You're just not going to see what was on the tax return that was transferred. So, unfortunately, I have the same issue with some of the software that I use with my families. So I use a different software that is just for the parents when it's listing all of their financial information, separate from what the student has for, selecting the colleges and all of that, because I don't want a student sitting there in their bedroom with a friend and they're in the software and, oh, geez, I didn't know your parents made that much money. So I separate that from on my end, but there's no way to separate it on the FAFSA. They will see it. So it's time to have a good conversation.
And what if, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a little bit, but what if you want a professional to look over what you're filling out for FAFSA? Is it possible to input everything and print it, or is it better off to actually just fill everything out on a paper version before you input it so that somebody else can take a look at it? If that's what you want.
I guess I'm not, are you?
If a family wants, professional like yourself or somebody else to actually look over their FAFSA before they actually submit, can they fill it in, save it, not submit, but just, and then print out what they've put into the,
Oh, yes.
Or are they better off, you think, just filling out a paper version? It doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters. If they're that concerned that I don't want somebody, seeing my social, which is, it's grayed out or X'd out on when you've inputted on the FAFSA anyways. So, it's just whatever your comfort level is, I guess. So, it's easier to look at what the actual is rather than a paper version that they're then going to go ahead and now input, and who's to say that they're going to input the information correctly. That could be a liability to the person that just gave them their go ahead in a sense. So, but you have to do whatever you're comfortable with. I just wanted to address some of the, I know we've talked about some of the future changes along the way. I wish my crystal ball wasn't so cloudy and I could tell you exactly when all of this was going to happen. So, EFC is going to change to SAI, Student Aid Index, really isn't going to make a difference. The income protection allowance is supposed to go up by $9,000, which that's a good thing. And all colleges are required to hear appeals, which is also a good thing. So some of the wins is going to be, child support treated as an asset instead of untaxed income. Workers' comp, veterans benefits are not going to be counted anymore on untaxed income, another huge benefit for some. And, they're going to reduce quite a number of questions, which on one hand seems to be a plus, but on the other hand, the downside of that is we have heard that more colleges are going to jump on the CSS profile bandwagon because they're not going to get the information that they wanted from the FAFSA. So this could be a double-edged sword. The losses, and this is the big one, and that we're trying to fight so much. No discounts for siblings enrolled in college simultaneously. So what that means is right now, if you have two children in college at the same time, and let's just say I've got my cheat sheet in front of me. Let's just say that your EFC you've got an adjusted gross income of 150,000. You've got 2 children. Your EFC is $30,000 just from your adjusted gross income. I'm just using flat figures here. Don't take these numbers as gospel, please. So that 30,000 EFC is going to be divided between those 2 students currently right now. Not quite 50%, sometimes 50 to 60%. So if your students are applying to, more expensive schools that give need-based aid, you have a better opportunity of getting grants and or Pell grants. But if this goes through and there aren't going to be those discounts, if your EFC is $30,000, it's going to be $30,000 for each child. And that's going to considerably change the dynamics of the grant opportunities that you'd be getting, what you can get now. So my cautionary recommendation is, we don't know if this is going to happen or not, if it's going to happen next year, the year after, or, with some blessing, we're fighting real hard for this not to happen. But if it does, this could have a major impact on some of the schools that you're selecting right now, if they are so super expensive. So it's something that you have to consider. The parent who provides most financial support completing the FAFSA, that's going to be a major hit for divorced families. And, the asset protection allowance, it's just going to go away. So those are some of the wins and losses and things to think about as we're, what we're looking at for the next couple of years. There was someone that had asked about, there were unemployment benefits. If you filed early in 2020, you actually, the 10,200 of unemployment benefits that were non-taxable, they didn't get that changed until like mid-March. So the people that filed their taxes early, their AGI is actually going to be higher. And so the bottom line is, if you filed your taxes prior to March 11th, then you're going to have special circumstances form to fill out to the schools that you're applying to see how are they going to address that. The reality is, it is income that you received. So it's going to be under the discretion of the college on whether they're going to make, any kind of an adjustment. Because it doesn't matter, they might adjust the additional tax that you paid, especially if there were 2 parents that received that unemployment benefit. But it's still considered non-taxable income. So it would still fall into that untaxed income category. So there's the link to this, but this was the actual explanation for that. So Debbie, you know more about.
Yes. So in the past, and this is not for everybody, as Luanne kind of went through, if you have a simple case, absolutely, most people can handle the FAFSA on their own. If you have some complications, if you just, not quite sure you're even doing it correctly, we have worked with Luanne, and she can review your FAFSA before you submit it. The same goes with the CSS profile, which is more difficult. Understandably, I mean, we just spent an hour and a half going through the FAFSA. We really didn't even touch upon the CSS profile. Maybe Luanne, we'll talk about that if we can try and coordinate some sort of walkthrough with that, but that's a little harder. So we just wanted to let you know that these services are available. It's really more to help kind of review that you're doing everything correctly. And it's not, these particular services don't necessarily have to do with, bigger planning, because that does take more time. And quite honestly, it probably is more beneficial if you start earlier with that. But these are just options because people still feel like even having gone through this walkthrough, having a lot of material, they just sometimes have additional questions where they want somebody to look over what they're doing. So, if you have that need, Luanne and we can help with that.
One thing that I forgot to mention too, Debbie, is if you're going to be filing your CSS profile, it would be really beneficial if you do it kind of in the same week. Sometimes I look at the CSS profile first for my clients before I do the FAFSA. So, it just kind of depends, but you do want to look at doing both of them so that your asset information is not going to be such a huge change. And if there is going to be a big change, make sure that you keep your receipts, your documentation and such.
So thank you, Luanne. This was a lot of information. So many people have asked. Yes, we will send a link to the recording tomorrow. I know that there were actually a ton more questions that that you guys sent in. I think actually, are we really almost going on 2 hours? So I think we kind of have to cut it tonight right now. We'll try and kind of look over some of these questions. If they fall within some general buckets, we can provide some answers to it. But reach out if you need some more specific help. But hopefully this was a good start. And we wish everybody luck.
Yes, good luck, and just take your time. Don't rush through it, and pat yourself on the back at the end. Have a glass of wine, maybe open a bottle of beer, and celebrate that you got it done for the first year, and then that you're going to be doing it again and again and again. So, and for those of you that have triplets, you have my blessing.
Okay. Thank you, Luanne.
Yep. So
thanks everybody who hung on to the end. Yep. And we will
everybody take care.
See you soon.
All right,
bye.
Bye.